The evening dinner was meant to seal a billion-dollar deal. Power suits, polite laughter, and quiet forks tapping porcelain. But none of them expected the interruption that would freeze time itself. A child's voice, soft, cracking with emotion, cut through the buzz of conversation like a blade. Please, marry my mommy. She's all I've got left. She stood small and trembling, clutching the sleeve of Nathan Callahan, the billionaire CEO known for building empires without blinking. The entire table fell silent. Nathan looked into her wide, tear-filled eyes and saw something that made his heart lurch. Her mother was the woman he had once walked away from. And the girl, she might be his daughter. The rooftop restaurant glittered with gold-edged elegance, perched high above the Manhattan skyline like a private kingdom in the clouds. Strings of lights danced in the summer breeze, and the soft hum of conversation blended with the gentle clink of fine crystal. Deals worth millions floated between bites of seared tuna and dry-aged steak. At the center of it all sat Nathan Callahan, CEO of Callahan Holdings, a man carved from precision and power. His navy suit was flawless, his movements calculated. A titan in the world of finance, Nathan was known for commanding rooms with little more than a glance. Tonight, he entertained global investors, offering them charm in one hand and opportunity in the other. He was halfway through dissecting a merger pitch when it happened. A small voice, uncertain, trembling, broke the air like shattered glass. Please, marry my mommy. She's all I've got. Conversation halted. Forks hovered midair. The moment hung suspended. Everyone turned. There, standing beside Nathan's chair, was a girl no older than 4. Her dress was worn thin and far too large for her frame, the hem dragging against her scuffed shoes. Her tangled brown hair clung to tear-streaked cheeks, and her tiny hand gripped the cuff of Nathan's tailored sleeve like it was her only anchor to the world. Nathan froze. He didn't speak. Couldn't. His dinner companions, powerful executives and stone-faced financiers, shifted in their seats, confused and awkward. One woman whispered something to a man in a tuxedo, but no one moved. The girl looked up at Nathan with eyes so wide, so open, they disarmed every ounce of composure he had mastered over decades. And something in those eyes, something in the shape of her face, the way her lower lip trembled, stabbed into him with terrifying familiarity. His breath caught. No, it couldn't be. She stood there like she belonged beside him, not afraid, not shy, just heartbreakingly sincere. Behind her, soft footsteps sounded on the stone tile. A woman's voice gasped, "Sophie, no!" Nathan turned, and his world shifted. There, under the golden light of the rooftop lanterns, stood Elena Carter. Her blonde hair was windblown, her coat frayed at the cuffs. She looked thinner, older, as if life had carved too many battles into her too soon, but he'd know her anywhere. 10 years had passed, but this wasn't just any woman. She was the one who had once painted light into his darkness, and now she held the hand of a little girl, who might just be his. The hush on the rooftop grew heavier as a woman darted toward the child. Her steps were uneven, one leg clearly favoring the other, and her breath came in short, shallow bursts. She wore a faded gray coat that clung to her thin frame, the collar fraying, the sleeves pushed up hurriedly. "Sophie, baby, no, you can't just—" she gasped, gathering the little girl into her arms with trembling hands. Nathan's chest tightened. He knew that voice. Soft, husky with exhaustion now, but it used to sing to him under moonlit dorm windows. It used to say his name like a promise. The woman looked up. Their eyes met. Everything inside Nathan seemed to still. "Elena." His voice was little more than a whisper. She froze. The air between them snapped taut. For a moment, the rooftop might as well have been silent and empty, save for them. "You remember," she murmured, her gaze guarded, but not unkind. It hit him all at once. The years had etched themselves across her face, lines of fatigue around her eyes, a paleness to her skin that hadn't been there before. But those eyes, he'd memorized them long ago. That quiet fire, that way she looked at the world like it still had color, even when his didn't. He rose slowly from his chair, napkin falling from his lap unnoticed. How is this possible?" She clutched Sophie tighter. Please, just forget this happened. She doesn't understand. She just saw you and… Nathan cut her off gently. Elena, wait. But she was already stepping back, her face flushed from shame or pain, or both. I didn't come here for anything. I didn't even know you'd be here, she said. This was a mistake. Nathan's eyes dropped to Sophie, who was peeking at him from her mother's shoulder. Her face, though streaked with tears, was impossibly familiar. That look, that tilt of the head, that furrowed brow. Memories flooded him. Elena sketching under the trees, laughing with paint on her cheek, falling asleep beside him during late-night poetry readings. And now this child, their child, was standing in front of him. But no, Elena hadn't confirmed it. She hadn't denied it either. Nathan's mind raced. Could this girl, this sweet, fearless girl, really be his? Let me help you, he said suddenly. You both look like you could use a warm meal and a place to sit. Please, just for a few minutes. Elena hesitated. The confidence she once wore like a second skin was gone now, replaced with something quieter, something protective. She looked at Sophie, then back at Nathan, and for just a flicker of a second, the past cracked open. She gave a small nod, not an agreement, not forgiveness, but a beginning, a dangerous one. Because if what Nathan feared was true, then this wasn't just an old flame reigniting. This was a life he'd unknowingly walked away from. The city below shimmered like shattered glass as Nathan stood by the penthouse window, one hand clenched around a forgotten glass of whiskey. But the skyline, once a symbol of everything he'd built, meant nothing tonight. His mind wasn't in Manhattan. It was 10 years back, beneath a sycamore tree on campus, where sunlight spilled through leaves like gold paint on parchment. Elena had sat cross-legged on the grass, sketching children at play with such softness in her lines that it hurt to look. Her hands had always moved with intention, every stroke a story, every color a belief. One day, she had whispered, I'll open a place where kids like me can feel seen. An art school, not for the rich, but for the forgotten. Back then, Nathan had been broken, grieving a father lost to illness, suffocating under the weight of legacy, too afraid to admit he needed anyone. And Elena? She had been the only light in his darkness. But he left. No note, no goodbye, just silence. He had told himself it was mercy, that she was better off without his baggage, his fear, his chaos. But now, staring into the night alone, all he could wonder was, did she ever stop waiting? And worse, had she cried the day he disappeared? Did she look for him when the pregnancy test turned positive? Did she sit in that tiny apartment, holding their daughter, wondering if he'd ever come back? The truth clawed at him now. He hadn't just left Elena. He might have abandoned everything that could have been. Nathan Callahan wasn't used to second-guessing himself. His instincts had built empires. But tonight, as he sat behind his oak desk in the glass tower of Callahan Holdings, his hands trembled. One call. That's all it took. He told himself it was to ease concern, to protect a vulnerable woman and child. But deep down he knew it was because he couldn't ignore the storm Elena had awakened in him. An hour later, a manila envelope was delivered by hand, unmarked, confidential. He hesitated only a moment before sliding it open. Patient Elena Carter. No insurance, diagnosis, late-stage congestive heart failure. Condition, degenerative valve disease. Prognosis, poor. Compliance, inconsistent. Missed 3 cardiology follow-ups. Risk status, critical. Nathan exhaled slowly. The room spun. She was dying. While he had been buying buildings and flying private, Elena had been fighting a war in silence, with a child at her side. His fingers turned the next page. Medical notes, job records, rental history, utility shutoffs. Then, handwritten pages. Unofficial, not meant to be in any file. They were journal entries, Elena's. One line caught his eye, circled in blue ink, like a confession not meant for anyone but her own soul. She looks so much like him. The eyes, the way she frowns when she thinks too hard. But I never told him. He had already chosen his future. I chose mine. I chose her. The room went still. His hand dropped to the surface of the desk. Sophie was his daughter. He hadn't been there when she took her first breath, when she scraped her knee or said her first word. He hadn't known. Elena hadn't told him, not out of spite, but out of something far more painful: resignation. She had respected his choice, had quietly accepted a life of hardship, chosen motherhood over bitterness. And he had spent the last decade chasing boardroom victories, while his own daughter grew up without a father. Nathan stood, the file still open, but his focus elsewhere. Not on the deals, not on the city, but on a 4-year-old girl who had looked up at him with impossible recognition and begged him to save the only person who had ever saved him. It wasn't just guilt that gripped him now. It was love and the unbearable truth that he might be too late. Nathan didn't show up with grand declarations or sweeping apologies. That wasn't how Elena lived, and it wouldn't be how he returned. Instead, he chose the quiet path, one of small, invisible acts of love. The next morning, a paper bag appeared at Elena's door. Inside, fresh produce, cereal, milk, even the brand of peanut butter she used to love in college. No note, no name, just nourishment. She looked around the hallway, puzzled. No one in sight. A week later, her overdue clinic fees were marked paid in full. The front desk nurse said it came through a charitable fund. Elena blinked, suspicious, but said nothing. She didn't know that Nathan had made the call personally, using an alias. He hadn't wanted gratitude. He just wanted her well. Then came the park. Nathan began walking past the small neighborhood green space at odd hours, never close enough to intrude, but near enough to see Sophie giggling near the swings or wobbling on a pink training wheel bike. One afternoon, Elena looked especially tired, barely able to keep her eyes open on the bench. Sophie pedaled forward, lost balance, and tumbled onto the mulch with a yelp. Before Elena could rise, Nathan was already beside the girl, crouching down. "You okay, kiddo?" he asked gently, brushing the dirt from her elbow. Sophie blinked through tears. "I fell," he smiled. "I saw, but you were so close to doing it all by yourself. Want to try again?" She looked to her mother. Elena didn't say a word. She didn't stop him. That was all the permission he needed. Nathan held the back of the bike seat, jogging beside Sophie as she tried again. She wobbled, squealed, but this time didn't fall. She rode halfway down the path, turned, and beamed. "Mommy, I did it!" Elena clapped, smiling faintly, though her eyes shimmered with tears. By the time they walked back together, Sophie held Nathan's hand like it had always belonged there. "Thank you," Elena said quietly. He nodded, replying just as softly, "She's amazing." Later that night, a new helmet appeared at their door, wrapped in newspaper. A note was taped to the top in blocky, childlike letters. "For the best little bike rider in town." Signed simply, "A friend." Nathan had once believed love needed to be loud. Roses, diamonds, big moments. But now he realized. Love was showing up. It was steadying a bike, paying a bill, leaving groceries without fanfare. It was in every unspoken word that said, "I'm here." And for the first time in years, Nathan no longer felt like a man watching life from behind a glass wall. He was becoming part of it, one small act at a time. And Elena? She hadn't let him in yet, but she no longer kept the door fully closed. It happened without warning. A hot summer afternoon. Elena had just picked up bread and fruit from the corner bakery, cheeks flushed from the heat, paper bag tucked against her hip. She never made it home. Halfway down the block, her knees buckled. The world tilted. Her chest tightened like a vice. The last thing she saw was Sophie's crayon drawing sticking out of the bag. 3 figures holding hands under a sun. Then everything went black. A nearby vendor saw her fall and rushed over. Within minutes, sirens wailed and an ambulance arrived. In Elena's worn purse, paramedics found a folded scrap of paper with just one number labeled. "In case of emergency, Nathan Callahan." They hesitated. That name meant headlines. Power. Walls that didn't return calls. But when they dialed, Nathan answered on the first ring. 20 minutes later, he stormed into the ER at St. Luke's Hospital, breathless, eyes wild. "Where is she? Elena Carter. She was brought in." The nurse at the desk eyed him cautiously. "Are you family?" He didn't blink. "Yes, I'm all she has." They let him through. Elena lay unconscious, pale against the stark white of the hospital bed. Tubes and wires surrounded her, machines beeping in steady rhythm. But her face looked peaceful, like she was simply sleeping. Nathan's breath caught. A doctor pulled him aside. "Her heart's failing faster than we anticipated," he said gravely. "We have a donor match, but we need immediate consent and financial clearance. She's uninsured and we—" "Do it," Nathan said. "But the cost? Do it now." He signed every paper, no hesitation, no limits, no questions. An hour later, Sophie arrived, escorted by a kind neighbor. When the little girl saw her mother through the glass, pale and unmoving, she burst into tears, clutching Nathan's hand. "Is she going to die?" she sobbed. Nathan knelt beside her, cupping her face. "No," he said firmly. "She's going to be okay, I promise. The doctors are helping her right now, and she's not alone anymore." That night, while surgeons worked to save Elena's life, Nathan stayed in the pediatric waiting room with Sophie curled up beside him. She clutched a stuffed elephant he'd bought from the gift shop. He read to her from a weathered book they found in a corner shelf, a silly story about a bear on a hat-finding quest. His voice, usually clipped and sharp in boardrooms, softened. Gentle, warm, protective. Eventually, Sophie looked up through sleepy eyes. "Mr. Nathan?" "Yes, sweetheart." "Mommy says you were her favorite dream." Nathan blinked fast, throat tightening. She rested her tiny hand on his. "I hope you stay." He wrapped his arms around her and whispered, "I'm not going anywhere." And he meant it. For the first time in his life, he truly meant it. The hospital room was dim, lit only by the soft morning light filtering through beige blinds. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor was steady now, no longer urgent, just alive. Clara Carter stirred, eyelids fluttering open for the first time in 2 days. The world felt heavy, her body unfamiliar, but the ache that had lived in her chest for months was gone. She inhaled, deeply, freely. Her gaze drifted sideways, and there, slumped in the visitor's chair, his head resting near her arm, was Daniel Callahan, unshaven, tie gone, shirt wrinkled, eyes rimmed red from lack of sleep. But he was there, holding her hand. He jerked awake as she stirred. His head snapped up, blinking rapidly. When he saw her eyes open, a breath he'd been holding for days rushed out of him. "Clara," he said, voice cracked with emotion. She tried to smile. "The surgery?" He nodded. "Perfect. You're going to be okay." Tears welled in her eyes, not from pain, but from the way he looked at her now, like she was more than just someone he'd lost, like she was the home he had been searching for all this time. Slowly, Daniel stood. Still holding her hand, he dropped to one knee beside the hospital bed, not in ceremony, not in drama, but in reverence. "I left you once," he whispered, voice hoarse, "because I was afraid, of my own heart, of being enough." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a simple gold ring. No diamonds, no flash, just truth. "But I don't want to run anymore. I want to spend every day making it right. Not just for you, but for our daughter." His eyes searched hers unguarded. "Let me be there. For every scraped knee, every bedtime story, every storm and every sunrise. Let me choose you, this time and always." Clara's chest trembled. Her heart, this new, steady, borrowed heart, beat faster. And then she nodded, eyes full of tears. "Yes," she whispered. In that moment, the past didn't matter. The mistakes, the silence, the years apart. All that mattered was now. And now she had him, and he had her, and their daughter had both. It wasn't held in a grand cathedral or a luxury ballroom. There was no chandelier, no string quartet, no designer planner. Instead, the ceremony took place in the small garden behind Elena's Community Art Center, where ivy crawled up wooden trellises and the air smelled of lavender and late summer sun. Fairy lights looped overhead, strung by hand the night before, some of them still blinking unevenly. Children from the neighborhood, many of whom Elena had taught art to over the years, helped decorate, stringing paper flowers and folding napkins into imperfect hearts. And at the center of it all stood Sophie, barefoot in a cream flower girl dress, her curls bouncing as she scattered petals along the grassy aisle. She twirled with joy, clutching a tiny basket made from recycled ribbon and hope. Then the music shifted, soft, acoustic, and every head turned. Elena emerged slowly, sunlight catching in her now healthy golden hair. Her dress was simple, off-white cotton and lace, stitched by a local seamstress who refused payment. She wore no veil, just a crown of small wildflowers, picked by Sophie that morning. Nathan Callahan stood beneath a wooden arch wrapped in white ribbon, a small boutonniere of baby's breath on his gray linen suit. No tie, no watch, no armor, just a man in love. His eyes never left her. When Elena reached the altar, Sophie joined them, slipping between their hands and lacing her tiny fingers through both of theirs. The officiant cleared his throat, but Nathan spoke first. His voice shook slightly. "You were always the light, Elena. Even when I chose the dark, even when I ran, you stayed kind. You became a mother. You built a life from nothing and never stopped giving. I promise now to stay, to show up, to build something stronger with you, not from wealth or reputation, but from faith and love and second chances. I will be the man who walks beside you, every step, every storm, every sunrise." A hush fell. Then it was Elena's turn. Her voice was soft but sure. "I loved you then. I love you now. But today I don't just choose you. I choose us. I choose a life where our daughter never has to wonder if she's loved or seen. You gave me a second chance. At life, at love, at family. I won't waste it." The officiant smiled. "By the power given to me and the joy in this moment, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Before they could kiss, Sophie threw her arms around both of them in a squeal. "You're both mine now." Laughter erupted around the garden, and under those strings of flickering light, between wildflowers and paper petals, three broken hearts became one whole family. Nathan kissed Elena softly, then scooped Sophie into his arms. "Let's go home," he whispered, because this time, he meant it. The reception wasn't lavish, but it was perfect. Long folding tables were set beneath the stars, covered with white linen and mason jars filled with wildflowers, sunflowers, baby's breath, and marigolds, each one handpicked by neighbors and students from the art center. Strings of lights cast a warm glow as laughter filled the garden, accompanied by the soft strumming of a local guitarist. There was no five-tiered cake, no champagne fountains, just homemade food from friends and family, lemonade poured in recycled jam jars, and one small, slightly lopsided cake that Sophie insisted on decorating herself, with finger-painted frosting lilies and a plastic toy bear on top. Later that evening, as the music faded into soft conversation and the cicadas began to sing in the trees, Nathan sat on a wooden bench near the dance floor, his suit jacket unbuttoned, sleeves rolled up. He didn't notice Sophie approaching at first. She climbed quietly into his lap, barefoot and content, still wearing her flower crown, now a little askew. Her face rested against his chest, her tiny hand playing with the buttons on his shirt. "I knew it," she murmured sleepily. Nathan looked down, brushing a curl from her cheek. "Knew what, sweetheart?" She yawned, eyes half closed. "That you were her happy ending." Nathan's heart swelled. He wrapped his arms around her, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. "No," he whispered, holding her tighter. "She's mine." In the golden hush of the garden, surrounded by laughter, flickering lights, and second chances, Nathan finally understood what it meant to belong, not to a company or a skyline or a legacy, but to a family. A woman who had waited, a child who had believed, and a man who had finally come home. Together they danced beneath the stars, three hearts once shattered, now whole. And somewhere in the quiet between the music and the moonlight, a little girl's whispered wish had come true. Sometimes life doesn't give us a perfect beginning, but it offers something even more powerful, a second chance. Nathan walked away once, like so many do, afraid, unsure, choosing ambition over connection. But when life circled back through the voice of a child, he listened and he stayed. In today's fast-paced world, where people often chase success over sincerity, stories like this remind us what truly matters: family, forgiveness, and showing up. Not just once, but always. You don't need grand gestures to make a difference. Sometimes it's the quiet presence, the steady hand, the whispered, "I'm not leaving," that changes everything. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever been given a second chance at love or at family? What would you do if someone from your past returned with a truth that changed everything? Share your story in the comments. You never know who it might inspire. Thank you so much for watching and spending time with us here on Warm Soul Stories. If this story touched your heart, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and sharing it with someone who might need a little hope today. And remember, it's never too late to come home. Not for love, not for forgiveness, not for the family still waiting with open arms. Until next time, keep believing in second chances.